you are ready. Room full of people who are excited about a conversation. So most of you all already know me. I'm Joyce Davis. I'm President and CEO of the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg. But what some of you guys may not know is I'm a working journalist and I work hard. So what I am about to do is to introduce to you and engage in conversation someone, a man who really needs no introduction. Okay? If you are in this room, you know exactly who Bob Woodward is and the role he has played in American history. But for the record, Robert Woodward is an American investigative journalist. He started working for the Washington Post as a reporter in 1971 and now holds the honorific title of associate editor. Now, while a reporter for the Washington Post in 1972, he teamed up with a guy called Carl Bernstein, right? And the rest is American history. That led to the resignation of President Richard Nixon. Their work of this team was called maybe the single greatest reporting effort of all time. And Woodward has written 21 books on American politics and current affairs, 14 of which have topped bestsellers list. So, Mr. Woodward, we are truly, truly honored to have you here for our 2024 WACA annual conference.
Thank you.
So let's get into it. Your latest book, more unsurprisingly, has received great reviews. It was an instant #1 New York bestseller with this description. Two-time Pulitzer Prize winner Bob Woodward tells the revelatory behind-the-scenes story of 3 wars: Ukraine, the Middle East, and the struggle for the American presidency. NPR's review said Bob Woodward's new book, War, invites readers into a world of back-channel diplomacy to bring readers as close as possible to the rooms where globally consequential diplomacy takes place. The Guardian, his Lloyd Green called War a sober but alarming must-read. And foreign policy columnist Michael Hirsch touted War for its explosive revelations about Biden, Trump, and Putin. So let's start off our conversation by asking you if you think these are apt descriptions of your book, and what do you believe are its most important revelations? And I'll give you this. Okay.
So I get my own microphone. Thank you very much. Provided by Gordon Liddy. You recognize his name.
Yes.
Yes, okay. One of the organizers of Watergate. What the portrait in this book is of the war in Ukraine, Middle East, struggle for the American presidency, and a lot of it's about Donald Trump. Is everyone aware he's president?
We heard.
To lots of people's surprise. So I think to kind of inch into your question, it was 8 years ago, 2016, before Trump was even the Republican nominee for president, I interviewed him, and we got to talking about a subject that interests both of us, which is power. And he said, real power is fear. Real power is fear. And he believed it then. He believes it now. It is one of the mechanisms, it is one of the things he does. He scares people. even people who support him and like him, he's very, very tough. And so he has created, and as president-elect, he will have that job for 4 years. I've written about over 50 years, 10, 11 presidents, and one lesson I hope I've learned is the extraordinary concentration of power in the president. President has constitutional duties, legal duties, but also becomes a symbol for the United States in that person as president. I mean, we were going in, we had one Trump era, we were going to have another one. And to be very direct with my conclusions from years of reporting on him, interviewing him, doing 3, really 4 books on him. What Trump is doing is recreating the imperial presidency, a concentration of power, like many ambitious autocrats to be. He is, I want to be direct, this is not a political judgment, this is a factual judgment. He is conning the public now. And conning, that's not as conning a ship, driving a ship, but as really attempting to, I mean, like all autocrats to be, or who want to be autocrats, there is an overreaching. He is, I believe, not only conning the American people now with these selections for top jobs in his administration, people who are even his strongest allies will privately acknowledge he's picking people who are not qualified, people who do not have the experience. And this is such an overreach that he not only is conning the public, I believe he's conning himself. And that we are in for a wild ride to take 2 of the most important cabinet posts, people to be somebody to be defense secretary, somebody to be attorney general, and take those 2 important cabinet posts. He is naming people who have an astonishing lack of management experience or knowledge of government. And so my view of it now, we are in for a real fight. He is dug in. He stands behind these people. Even Republicans in private, whispering candidly, voice astonishment that he's doing this. And so I can't answer the question why, you, as president, one metaphor for what the job is, you're driving a big car, the American government, down the road, and the check engine light goes on. And so what you do, what he's doing here with these selections is pulling into a clown store.
Oh. you've made us very clear, but let me ask you, we'll get back to Trump too. But I did want to talk, because you talk about it a lot in this book. You give us really insights into the lead up to Ukraine, into the Middle East, all that, but I'll tell you, the one thing that I was left with is that nobody in leadership, none of the presidents, that really seems to come off as a superhero, right? And so one of the questions that I had for you, well, here's what the Guardian said about the picture you painted of Biden, Trump, and Putin, all of them, right? Warren depicts an administration under Joe Biden that is often behind the curve, at times captive to its own wishful thinking. The withdrawal from Afghanistan haunts, Trump mesmerizes. Yet as Woodward tells it, Biden and his team did clearly see the menace Russia posed. But unlike George W. Bush, Biden did not need to gaze into Vladimir Putin's blighted soul. Unlike Trump, he did not feel compelled to fluff his ego like a besotted fanboy. So you also quote Biden as telling a friend, that's why we are here. Barack never took Putin seriously. We gave Putin a license to continue. Well, I'm revoking his license. So that's
license.
Right. I didn't want to say it.
One of the things you find in this kind of reporting is that people speak English.
Yes, they do.
And they speak very directly.
So my question to you is, did any of our presidents get it right in dealing with Putin? Or did they all get it wrong? Was foreign policy right, Foreign Policy Magazine, in saying these wars are signs of just how dysfunctional the U.S. political system has become?
And I really disagree with those evaluations, particularly about Biden. Now, Biden is in disfavor, but as I show in the book, he did some very, very important things that end at the most important endpoint. He has made the homeland safe. The homeland is safe. Why is the homeland safe? Because Biden, despite the pressure he was under as president in the end of 2021, first year of his presidency, refused to send American ground troops to Ukraine. Now, that is that is the Joe Biden, in my view, at his best. It is Biden who, at age 81, observed Vietnam and the catastrophe of Vietnam. How many troops did the United States send to Vietnam? You remember?
No, I don't.
500,000 troops. What else happened? 58,000 of those troops were killed in combat. Biden remembers that, and so when the intelligence, the exquisite, amazing intelligence showed that Putin was going to invade Ukraine, and there was pressure on Biden to send American troops, this is what happens. I call it the troop band-aid. Somebody runs in, Mr. President, we have to solve this problem. Let's send American troops. Now, that's the correct response if we've been attacked. If we have not been attacked, as we were not attacked in this case, Biden said, no, I'm not sending American troops. And that was a decision made with the knowledge of what can happen. You send a few troops, and then the Pentagon comes over, oh, we don't have enough, we need 5,000 more, 10,000 more, 20,000 more, and you have another Vietnam. Biden refused. And that is really an important particularly in Ukraine, and we don't have American troops there. I think, as somebody who served in the military, in the Navy, in the late 60s, 1960s, I know I don't look that old, but I do look that old, and I am that old. And that was a catastrophe of Vietnam. And so I said, concluded, and I report this in the book, some of his aides say, no, let's not rule out sending troops. And Biden said, I'm ruling it out. He walked out and said publicly on the way to the helicopter, I'm not sending American troops. And that was a really important decision. And so the world that is going to be handed to Donald Trump is going to be a world where there are not even 10, let alone 500,000 troops fighting a foreign war, as happened in Vietnam. So I give Biden credit, and I've said, I think if you analyze it historically, he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for protecting the United States. That's his job. Yes, if we're attacked, I'm sure he would send troops. But by not doing that, that is such a, we all have had experiences where somebody says, or we say, I'll solve this problem by entering the fray on a street corner fight or an automobile accident or something happening at home. And that restraint is monumental and puts us in a position where the homeland is safe.
So you think Biden has basically acted wisely, but I wonder if you agree that you thought perhaps Obama did not do what he should have to prevent where we are now.
Well, I mean, there's Biden actually privately criticized Obama for this, that Barack did not understand Putin and the threat of Putin. And what Putin, his first actions were to take the Donbass, to take Crimea, and of course we now know that was just an appetizer for Putin. And that you can look at that, but I think you want, instead of looking at 2014, look at this year, 2024, and we're in a much stronger, better position. I understand that is a unusual judgment, and but it's based on the facts and the experience of reporting, doing books on 6 wars, and or 6 books on the various wars we've had in the last 50 years.
Okay, so we're here in 2024. We're on the precipice of a new age. Americans have voted. Donald Trump is returning to the White House. Now, in your book, you do warn that you believe Trump is far worse than even Nixon was. You describe him as...
And that's our
saying a lot. But you describe him as the wrong man for the presidency, unfit to lead the country, and the most reckless and impulsive president in American history. Now, here's the hard question. Why do you think millions of Americans, including some in this very room, may have a different assessment of Donald Trump?
Because part of the instance, in the last year of his first presidency was the year 2020. Is that? Yes, that's the last year. And I did 9 hours of interviews with President Trump. I think there were 19 interviews. This was the year, if you remember, of COVID. And what his handling of COVID is, as I show, a moral felony. He was warned in January of 2020 that this was going to be a catastrophe, going to kill hundreds of thousands of people. He ignored it. I was interviewing him. I said, Mr. President, what's the plan? And he said, don't worry, it's going to go away. And finally, I got the information that he was warned. And I kept saying, what are you going to do? And now, he closed down the country because of COVID in the spring. And a very important series of interviews I did with him, for instance, on July 20th, 2020. We're doing these interviews, and I'm asking, what's his plan? What is he doing? And on that July 20th, I said, Mr. President, 140,000 people have died of COVID at this point, and you were warned. And what is your plan now, even though it's months late? What are you going to do? And you can not only read this in the book, The Trump Tapes, but you can listen to it, because I recorded these conversations with his permission. And on July 20th, 140,000 people died. What's the plan? And as he kept saying, don't worry, it's going to go away. I mean, which is a preposterous thing to say, not just medically, but managerially. And 140,000 people have died. What's your plan? And I pressed him hard, and you can hear this. And he said, don't worry, astonish me. At this moment, it made my head spin. He said, don't worry, I'll have a plan in 106 days. 106 days. And I finally realized that was election day. When he was running through, that's all he was thinking about. He wasn't thinking about his job to protect the public. Now, you're at home, and somebody in your household says, the house is on fire, and I think we ought to call the fire department or dial 911. And you say, no, don't worry, we'll do that in 106 days. Unthinkable, but it's exactly what happened.
Well, tell me, I think that's what you said. Well,
that's what he said.
yeah.
I mean, this is not, you can hear his own words and his old.
But see, that's what's so baffling, that your books are out there, this one. There's so much information that was available, but yet he's about to become president. So let me ask you one final question before we open.
Yeah, and the question is WTF.
Let me ask you one final question that I have to ask, and considering your stature as one of the country's, the world's most respected journalists, I'm going to ask you this as a fellow journalist. have we lost our way? I ask this.
You mean if journalists lost their way?
Because the kind of influence that you had when you were a young reporter at the Washington Post, we don't have it. We just don't have it anymore, right? And
I'm still a young.
Not me. This young person doesn't have. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the kind of influence you once had, you could pull down a president who deserved to come down. We can't even convince.
First, there's a myth about that we pulled down the president.
Okay.
We did some of the reporting that, and the real person who exposed Richard Nixon, some of his Alexander Butterfield, who disclosed the taping system. But the real monument goes to Senator Sam Ervin, who set up the Watergate Committee. I remember after Carl and I had done our stories in the Post, which were widely disbelieved and denounced, Senator Ervin called me up and said, the leader of the Senate has given me the assignment of investigating Watergate, and maybe we'll figure out what one of the deputy campaign managers did. He put the bar low on himself, but we're going to have, and he set up this investigation, and some of you were in my age bracket. How many people remember the Irvin Committee? Okay, but everyone should know what Irvin did, because he set this up with low expectations, and what he did was he called everyone as a witness from the Nixon White House. Now, not Nixon himself, but Alderman Ehrlichman, if those names ring a bell. And he insisted that they testify under oath, and he brought them to nationally televised hearings. And they exploded all over each other. They were pointing, no, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that, all that illegal, corrupt idea was, Bob Haldeman's responsibility, who was the chief of staff. And what those hearings did is laid bare, and then a special prosecutor was appointed, and lots of those people went to jail, and Nixon resigned.
Right, but it was largely based on your revealing this. But I'm still going to press this question.
That is false history. Yes, Carl and I did some stories, but it was Senator Ervin who said, I'm going after this. And
he took it seriously.
We took it seriously. We took it seriously. He had a number of powers that we didn't have. He could subpoena people. He could get them under oath. He could insist on as full disclosure as you can have. And there was so much hate and animus in the Nixon White House that they... No, he did it. He did it. Oh, that was his idea. And then it turned out that Nixon was the one behind so much of it, and he resigned.
Well, let's open it up to questions from the audience, because I know there are a lot of questions here. I'm still going to pressure on the state of American journalism later. But sure. Yes, let's take a question here. Do you have a microphone? This gentleman at the... and if you can keep your questions concise and questions, that will allow us to get in more. Okay.
Right, thank you. Thank you for your service to journalism, sir. You said that Biden said Obama didn't do the right thing. Didn't understand. Biden didn't send troops. What could Obama have done back then? And follow up, does Obama, as far as you know, recognize that or agree with it or disagree with it? Thank you.
What happened at that time was 2014, and Putin, as I mentioned, took the Crimea, took Donbass. And what Biden is saying, and still is invading Ukraine, one of the most significant wars in the, I mean, just real quickly, how important Ukraine is. I was at the UN 6 months ago, or maybe a year ago, and talked to President Duda of Poland. And he said, you don't realize how important the Ukraine war is to Poland. He said, you got on the map. Here's Russia, here's Ukraine. If Ukraine falls to Russia, as he said very painfully, we're next. We have a 315-mile border. So
there's a lot at stake. Let's take a, how about this lady here?
yes.
Let's wait for the microphone. They're rushing it to you.
If Trump on day one gives Putin a call again and says, go ahead and take Ukraine so we won't be sending anyone in, what countries do you think will step up to fight Russians and North Koreans?
Good question. What countries would come to the aid of Ukraine now if Trump said, go ahead, no care?
Well, I mean, then Trump would remove all American aid. We've spent billions of dollars to bolster Ukraine, a democracy fighting a autocracy, fighting Putin and Russia. So if that was withdrawn, I mean, then Trump has kind of said, and I quote Jake Sullivan, who's the national security advisor to Biden now, saying that if Trump gets in, he'll just wave Putin to Kyiv, just now. Is that possible? Yeah. And give up the support that we've given nobly, and I think for really important political and moral reasons, billions of dollars of aid.
Does Europe have the ability to defend Ukraine without it?
It'd be hard. It'd be hard. And as we know, Russia's on the march. They're using the very newest, most potent weapons, and Biden has authorized us to use some of our. So that war, like happens in war, they start here and they escalate and escalate. Just this week, it's escalated in a very significant, dangerous way.
Okay, our next question.
Yes, Mr. Woodward, investigative journalism is what you do. Your thoughts about the relationship between Russia, Putin, and Trump. Is there more there than what we've heard so far? In other words, what's your thoughts about that relationship? Why is Trump so infatuated with Putin? And do you think they have something that we don't know that hasn't been uncovered in all these years?
Yes, well, in my book, I quote the former Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, saying that he's so suspicious of it, he wonders if there's some blackmail going on at this moment. It is possible.
So let's get it. Let's this gentleman and then okay, here and then in the back. Okay.
Yes, your book looks very fascinating.
Hold that close.
The microphone.
You praise President Biden for declaring Americans will not go into Ukraine. But isn't there an argument for some ambiguity in that department? When you think about it right now, they're in a war of attrition. As you say, there's gradual escalation. Biden held back on giving permission for the use of attackers in Russia. And this war may go on for a very long time. Is that really sound policy? And especially now with Donald Trump about to take office.
It's an escalation that I mentioned.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I think he's asking if you believe the current policy is sound, is right?
Is it enough, you mean, to protect Ukraine? And it's a very dangerous situation, and Trump, who will hold office in January, has made it clear that it's not high on his list, to say the least, and he may abandon Ukraine, which would be a tragedy. It is a democracy that we have invested billions of dollars in, plus the moral support of the United States, and would be to me, an unimaginable tragedy to abandon Ukraine.
Let's get a question from one of our young people. There's a gentleman back there with his hands up at the back. Yes.
I see you like the left.
And then we'll move to the right.
Well, this was a very interesting election season. In the aftermath of it, one of the things that I thought was interesting was that in exit polls, Trump actually led on the issue of a threat to democracy as voters' biggest issue. So it was just so interesting watching the reporting throughout the election season and then seeing the outcome. So my question is, why did the media's reporting fail to connect with the American people?
That's perfect.
Well, don't know the answer to that. I mean, the voters decided we're a democracy. But this is in a great tradition. Let's remember the American Revolution. There was another country that we got support from, and we were able to survive with that support. So let's, the value that needs to persist in this is support democracy.
Okay, let's go to the, how about this gentleman at the front here with the vest there?
No book. Where's the book?
And then we'll move back. If you keep them concise, we can get a lot in.
I really appreciate what you did with Watergate. I was
Close to your mouth. Yeah.
okay. I really appreciate what you did with the Nixon. I'm your contemporary. I was a soldier too. What I want to ask you is, what danger do you see from our military-industrial complex? Going back in 1989, Gorbachev and Reagan decided they weren't going to have a nuclear war and they were going to have peace. James Baker told Shevardnadze that we aren't going to extend NATO 1 inch past East Germany. And 2 years later, George H.W. Bush decided that it was important that we have nuclear weapons, and in the next 10 years we added 10 states around Russia. And I'm just wondering what you think of our industrial military complex.
So the question is, what do you think of the military, American military?
The industrial military complex, I mean, it's a driver, there's no question, but we still have policymakers in government who really decide how to take care of this, but there is pressure from that military-industrial complex. Also, I mean, this is highly relevant now with President-elect Trump saying what he's going to do in the Pentagon. And I know lots of generals, lots of people in the Pentagon now who've been there. I worked in the Pentagon for a year, my last year in the Navy, and a lot of tough people there. And if a president will be obeyed, but there's going to be a lot of counter pressure to not do some of these things that Trump has talked about. And the idea that you want weakness in the Pentagon or the Justice Department makes no sense. And it is what Trump is doing. He is saying, oh, look, we're going to have people with no experience. Well, this is contrary to all management theory of any institution, including the government. So how this ends, I don't know, but I just know without committing or promising, I can see 3 books coming out of it.
Dear final
Not by me, not by me.
Okay.
It's time for me to go on vacation.
We do have a question from our former president that I'd like to ask. Bill Clifford has a question, and I'm not a leftist, but
Thank you, Joyce. Mr. Woodward, is one of your books going to be about the U.S. Senate, which rose to the occasion in the McCarthy era and Watergate era, and a prideful institution was one of the 2 chambers attacked on January 6th. They have a role in financing and overseeing branches of the government. Are they going to rise to the occasion?
I'm sorry.
it's the Senate. It's the U.S. Senate for
Is the Senate going to rise to the occasion in the face of what you described as clown car appointments? Or when will they rise to the occasion?
You know, I know lots of senators, and they don't have none that I've ever known, and that's hundreds over 50 years. They are not shaking violence. They will assert themselves. And what the outcome, I don't know, but you're going to see a lot of assertion there. And just look, the really important fact here is that President-elect Trump has said he's going to put people in key positions who would really, in Vegas, get about a 5% chance of succeeding. It's just not. You need to know something. You need to have that knowledge and experience. And it's a shame. Now, what's he trying to do? Trump, I know well, many books, many hours interviewing him. He, as I was saying, I guess I have to repeat myself because I don't get better, trying to recreate the imperial presidency. So it's all him. He's the decider, the only decider. In constitutional framework, there have been presidents who've tried that before. I think of Nixon. And it didn't work 50 years ago. I don't think it will even work now. But that's
We'll
to be
see
seen.
how well it works. But with that, would you join me in thanking Bob Woodward?